If you've ever realized too late that someone was speaking directly to you, without saying your name, subscribe and stay. These are the stories where recognition arrives quietly, and there's no way to look away once it does. The room is louder than she expected. Applause echoes off glass walls and polished floors, a controlled celebration of milestones, growth, numbers that look good on slides. The annual company forum always feels like this. Measured enthusiasm, professional smiles, carefully timed laughter. She stands near the front row, hands loosely clasped, posture composed. Host. Observer. The microphone squeals briefly as it's adjusted, and the applause tapers off. And now, the moderator says, we have one final speaker. Someone from within the company who volunteered to share a personal perspective on leadership, resilience, and accountability. The name is announced. She stills. Not because she doesn't recognize it, but because she doesn't expect to hear it here. The single dad from operations. Not an executive. Not a board member. Not someone who usually stands under lights. She turns her head just as he steps onto the stage. He looks steady. Not nervous, not overconfident. Just grounded, like someone who knows exactly why they're standing where they are. He adjusts the microphone once, glances briefly at the audience, then begins. I wasn't sure whether to say yes to this, he says. I don't usually volunteer to speak. Soft laughter ripples through the room. She watches closely now. I work behind the scenes, he continues. I fix problems most people don't notice until something breaks. That earns a few nods. But when I was asked to talk about leadership, he says, I realized I don't think leadership starts with authority. Her attention sharpens. I think it starts with responsibility, he continues, and with recognizing the moment you choose safety over honesty. The room quiets. She feels it then. That subtle shift when a speech stops being general, when it begins to aim. There was a time, he says, when I thought doing the right thing meant walking away from something that mattered. Her breath tightens almost imperceptibly. I told myself it was practical, necessary, that I was being mature. He pauses. I was wrong. A hush settles across the audience. She feels exposed in a way that makes no sense. He hasn't looked at her, hasn't gestured, hasn't changed his tone. And yet, I learned, he continues, that sometimes we don't leave because something is impossible. He swallows. We leave because we're afraid of what it might ask of us. Her fingers curl slightly at her sides. This is not a generic lesson. This is not theoretical. This company talks a lot about vision, he says, about choosing growth, about courage. A few executives nod approvingly. But courage, he adds, isn't just about moving forward. Sometimes it's about admitting the cost of what you left behind. The room is silent now. Her chest tightens. She knows this story. She's lived it. I once worked with someone, he says carefully, who believed that wanting too much would make them smaller. A murmur moves through the crowd, quiet, curious. They thought ambition meant surrendering everything else, he continues. That choosing one life meant burying another. Her pulse pounds in her ears. She can't remember the last time she felt this scene. And the truth is, he says, voice steady but weighted, nothing buried stays quiet forever. He pauses, just long enough. The silence stretches, uncomfortable now, electric. I didn't come here to talk about regret, he says. I came here to talk about accountability. He looks out over the audience at last. For half a second, his eyes meet hers. The world tilts. And accountability, he says, holding the gaze only briefly, means acknowledging the people we walked away from, whether they know it or not. She exhales shakily. No one else notices. No one else could possibly know. But she does. This speech is not about leadership. It's about her. I don't believe in public confessions, he continues, but I do believe in truth spoken clearly, even when it's uncomfortable. The room remains silent, held. If I could answer one question honestly today, he says, it would be this. Would I make the same choice again? He pauses. No, he says simply. I wouldn't. Applause breaks out slowly, tentative at first, then stronger, more confident. People nod. Some smile. Others clap with enthusiasm. moved by what they assume is a universal message. She doesn't clap. She can't, because she knows the question he answered, and she knows who it was for. When the speech ends, the moderator thanks him, the crowd rises, and the noise rushes back in all at once. People turn to one another, commenting on the honesty, the vulnerability, the unexpected power of it. She remains still. Her chest feels tight, her thoughts unsteady. He steps down from the stage, disappearing briefly into the crowd. She watches him move through the room. Congratulated, thanked, patted on the shoulder. He doesn't look for her. That somehow makes it worse. The event wraps up quickly after that. People drift toward exits, toward conversations, toward cocktails and small talk. She doesn't move. Finally, she does what she never does. She leaves early. In the hallway outside the auditorium, the noise fades. The quiet presses in, welcome and sharp. She leans against the wall, breathing slowly, grounding herself. She doesn't hear his footsteps until he speaks. Are you all right? She looks up. He stands a few feet away, expression careful, unreadable. I should be asking you that, she says. A pause. I didn't know you'd be there, he admits. I didn't know you'd say that, she replies. They stand there, the space between them heavy with everything unsaid. That question, she says finally. The one you answered. He holds her gaze. Yes. You weren't speaking in general, she says. No, he says quietly. I wasn't. The hallway feels too narrow, too exposed. Why? She asks. He doesn't rush his answer. Because some things don't get closure unless they're spoken, he says. Even if the person hearing them isn't ready. Her throat tightens. I didn't think you'd recognize it, he adds. I recognized every word, she says. Silence stretches again, this time private, charged, unavoidable. We need to talk, she says. Yes, he agrees. We do. She straightens, composure reasserting itself with effort. Not here, she says. Not like this. Then when? She meets his eyes, steady despite the storm inside her. Soon, she says. And honestly. He nods once. I'll be ready. They part without another word. But the question he answered, publicly, irrevocably, follows her down the hall. And for the first time in years, she doesn't know whether the life she chose is the one she still wants to defend. She doesn't go home right away. She sits in her office long after the building empties, lights dimmed, city glowing beyond the windows like a separate world that doesn't know what just happened inside her chest. The applause still echoes faintly in her ears, not as sound but as pressure. She's replayed his words too many times already. Would I make the same choice again? No. She closes her eyes. That answer wasn't brave. It wasn't reckless. It was final. Her phone buzzes once on the desk. A message from her assistant about tomorrow's schedule. She silences it without reading further. Tonight doesn't belong to logistics. She gathers her coat and leaves quietly, taking the private elevator down, emerging into the night with a decisiveness that surprises her. She doesn't hesitate when she reaches the street. She knows where she's going. He's still there when she arrives, not waiting theatrically, just seated at the bar of a quiet restaurant across the street from the venue, jacket draped over the back of the chair, hands folded loosely in front of him like he hasn't decided what to do with them yet. He looks up when she enters. No surprise. Just recognition. She walks toward him. Do you mind if I sit? She asks. He shakes his head. No. They sit side by side, not across from each other this time. Close enough to feel presence without touching. For a moment, neither of them speaks. I didn't plan to say it like that, he says finally. I know, she replies. You didn't stop me. She exhales slowly. I didn't want to. That admission lands heavier than anything else she could have said. She turns toward him, posture straight but expression stripped of pretense. You didn't embarrass me, she says. You didn't undermine me. You didn't cross a line. I was careful, he says quietly. Yes, she agrees. That's why it worked. Silence settles again, thicker now but honest. You asked a question on that stage, she continues. But you weren't asking the room. No. And you answered it knowing I'd hear it. Yes. She studies his face, searching for defensiveness, expectation, pressure. She finds none. Why now? She asks. He considers that. Because time stopped being neutral. And because I realized I was still living with the answer. Her throat tightens. I built my life on not asking that question, she says softly. On convincing myself that what I chose was the only version of courage. And now, he asks. And now, she says, I'm realizing courage might have been staying long enough to be changed. The bartender sets down 2 glasses of water without comment and walks away. She wraps her fingers around the glass, grounding herself. I don't regret my ambition, she says. I don't regret what I built. I wouldn't expect you to, he replies. But I regret believing it required erasing other parts of myself, she adds. He nods once. That's what your silence said back then. Her breath catches. You noticed that? She asks. Yes. They sit with that truth, neither of them rushing to soften it. I don't want to rewrite the past, she says. And I don't want to romanticize what we were. I don't either, he says. I want to acknowledge what still exists. She turns toward him fully now. And if it does? She asks. Then we decide, he says. As we are now. Not as who we were. She studies him. This man who spoke into a microphone once and shifted the ground beneath her without raising his voice. This can't be secret, she says. I wouldn't ask it to be. And it can't be rushed. I know. She exhales, something unclenching in her chest. For the first time, she says quietly, I don't feel like I have to defend my life. He meets her gaze steady. That's what I heard in your silence tonight. They leave together a while later. Not hand in hand. Not making declarations. Just walking side by side into the night, pace matched without effort. At the corner where they part, she stops. That question you answered, she says. You didn't ask it out loud. No. But you trusted me to hear it. Yes. She nods slowly. Next time, she says, I want to answer one. His brows lift slightly. Publicly, he asks. No, she replies. Honestly. That makes him smile. They don't kiss. They don't need to. Some connections don't announce themselves through touch. They announce themselves through choice. And tonight, for the first time in years, she walks away knowing the life she built doesn't have to be defended, only expanded.